well, the first one is timing the market, which is what I was just mentioning about the property that I bought in Sutherland. Like if you understand the cycles that happen, in Australia, the macro and micro cycles that are going on, you can pretty much, work out when there's going to be another little boom, if you want to call it that. So that's timing the market. Buying well and buying under market value. People put properties on the market every day for some sort of reason. And if you can find a vendor who is invested in selling because they have to, it may be because of death, divorce, debt, they're moving interstate. So they're the main reasons. And essentially to them, money is not as important as the outcome. So if you can achieve the outcome that they need, which might be a quick settlement, or it could be, a certain amount of flexibility for them to be able to live in the property for a few months until they move, all sorts of reasons that people have. They're the conditions that we can put in contracts. And that enables you to buy under market value. Not easy to find, but definitely well possible.
Yeah. Go.
Under market is, I don't know. It's somebody asked a question about it the other day, or like if a valuation come back further than what somebody paid. And I don't know. To me, under market, like you could, I don't know. Joe and I've had discussions on this, but I don't know. You probably can do it, but I think it's incredibly rare to have it happen.
Well, I like to think that there's people, there's 3 or 4 types of people. The people that need to desperately sell right now, and as Anita said, the money is not the problem. I need a quick settlement because I need to get out for death, divorce, whatever reason. And then there are people that are like, oh, I'll just kind of put it on the market, see how we go. And then there are people that are like, I don't really care. I just, the real estate agent knocked on my door and I thought I'd put it on the market. So I don't really need to sell this thing unless I get a stupid number. And I'm a prime example of this. I had a real estate agent reach out on my property. My property's worth about 550. And then they're like, oh, great. This is it. We want to sell it for you. We'll get 550. I'm like, no, if you can sell it for 570, then we'll chat. But obviously they couldn't. The market wasn't there. So you are all good. You can't do it.
Why 570, Joe, instead of what they said they could get 550, but you want an extra 20K? What was the 20K that was it? So you could buy a nice car or something?
Yeah, it was because I knew that it wouldn't get there, and I didn't really want to sell it, but she kept hounding me. So I thought, well, let's give her a silly number. And
why didn't you say 600 then, mate? I mean, because the problem is if she'd actually got that 570, would you have sold?
Well, then I just have to say I don't want it. But there are those people out. There are those people out in the market that exist and that just don't really care to sell their property. The real challenge that you're going to have is there are investment grade properties out there, and then there are non-investment grade properties, and then you need to try and find where is a investment grade property that has a vendor that's willing to sell and willing to sell it at a good price as well. That's kind of my thoughts to that is trying to find those opportunities, but also find the opportunity with the vendor as well.
Let's talk to add value, styling and staging, because I think those are really the crux of this session. So tell us your thoughts on how you make money through adding value and styling and staging, Anita.
Well, when you look at a property, it's like, has it already had a renovation, or is it in original condition, or it could be halfway there? And sometimes people do a renovation, but they just completely ignore the floor plan and they just replace like with like. So if you can see opportunity in that, just by pulling out a couple of walls and opening things up and flow through to the backyard, that in itself can, present great add value. So floor plan is a huge one because people generally can only see what's in front of them. And so when I'm looking for property, I'm trying to find ways that can I create another room? Like one of my renovations was I had an internal garage to the house, a single garage, which really, wasn't practical, but I converted that into the master bedroom and ensuite. So, So that's what I mean by looking at the floor plan. And if you can do things that don't involve council and it's within the framework of the existing building structure, then later on you can go and add, example, a carport or a granny flat or whatever it is. But it's looking at the floor plan that's essential when trying to look at, can you add value.
So when you were looking at the garage to convert into a bedroom, that's not something people think, right? The garage is separate. It's it's dirty. It's gross. It's like cold and dusty. And then all of a sudden you've just converted it into a master bedroom. How do you think about converting garages? Like, is there things that we can be looking out for that are like, yes, we can do it, or no, we can't?
If you understand what the council, I guess, town plan is, their rules about setbacks, which includes off-street parking. If you understand that, you would be able to look at a property and say, well, yes, I can convert that garage. Like in my instance, the garage was stepped down, so the concrete had to be filled by 150 mils to elevate it,
right,
to bring it in line with the rest of the house. So it really depends on the property that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And knowing those things, and not everyone knows that, so that's when you have to invest in a certifier before you settle, if that's what you want to do too.
So what do you mean by that? What did you have to do that?
In my case, I did actually, but I already owned the property. But before I did anything, I got a certifier in shortly after I moved in, and I said, can I convert this, or can I put a granny flat in the backyard? And he said yes and yes. I thought, great. So it took me 5 years to do the renovations on this house that I'm speaking about, but it meant that I knew the end goal, what I was trying to achieve, was to do a garage conversion. So when I did other works on the house, I made sure that I catered for the plumbing and that, so I could do that down the track. So whenever you do a renovation, you always have the end goal in mind and then work your way backwards. Nothing worse than seeing a house where you can see they did one bathroom on one end of the house and another bathroom on the other end of the house, and they look completely different. And you can see that they did them 5-10 years apart, and there's no continuity. So, always have this end plan in your mind about what you want to do.
Yeah, what are some of the high value areas that we should be focusing on if we're looking at a renovation? There's a question here, actually. This might tie in nicely. What is the best change to make to an old style Queenslander, narrow sunrooms, etc.?
Interesting.
What are your thoughts on, let's say we have a Queenslander, an older Queenslander, like what is going to be the biggest value adds that we should be turning our attention to? We look on real estate, we see the floor plan, we see it's a little bit run down. What are you looking at first? What are your go-to high value adds? And what are the things that you're kind of having in the back of your mind to, not focus on as much, ignore?
Well, I mean, in general, it's always, like the kitchen. The kitchen is the center of the house. So is a kitchen in the right location? Maybe it's worth moving the kitchen to the other side of the building. And I guess in the case of really, people get stressed out about, I have to pay too much with plumbing and that. When you've got a Queenslander, it's up in the air with floorboards. It's not that hard to run some pipes underneath.
Yeah.
Yep. The same with the bathroom. It's not a big deal when you've got a concrete slab, whereas you have to dig all of that up. So anything that's on floorboards, it's not a big deal. You just have to add a little bit more. But people want to see functional spaces. So if you've got a Queenslander with a sunroom, what's the purpose of that sunroom? Is it just sit there to sit, or can you make a nice little nookie or a playroom or an office, or I mean, again, each property individually is going to be different. Has it got a step down, or is it on the same level? Is it got open windows, or can you enclose them and put bay windows? So many different situations, but it's all about functionality. People want to see that, I didn't think of that idea. Maybe there's a staircase. Can we build close in the bottom of the staircase for extra storage, or that's where you can put your office and a desk. Maximizing all of those crooks and crannies in the building.
Yeah.
Do you have a rule of thumb for how much a reno cost should be? For example, changing old kitchens to open space? Because a lot of the stuff you were just talking about can feel overwhelming for people, because you're like, we're going to move this kitchen here, we're going to plumb the piping here. Like, to me, I just think, wow, that's so expensive, it's going to cost a lot. Like, how do you work out where that investment comes from? Like, how do we know that it's going to grow in value? Like, what are some of your rule of thumbs?
Well, on the slide, I think I've got a little pie graph there of percentages on your standard renovation.
Let's do it. Bring it up, Jeff.
There, Jeff.
No pressure.
It is loading. Here we go. Oh, wow.
So, the general rule is 10% of the property value. So if you've got a $500,000 property, then that gives you a budget of $50,000. As you can imagine, with $50,000, you can't really do a whole lot when you're talking a new kitchen and bathroom, because nowadays, your basic kitchen and bathroom is at least $20,000 each. If it's a unit, you could probably do it, but if it's a house, a lot of houses have really poor landscaping and that, and you need to set aside a budget for that, which a lot of people don't do. So you've got to look at the end value. And with any renovation that I do, I look at what are comparable sales on the market of renovated properties, and then what are the values of properties that are unrenovated, and how much money can I add value to. So whilst the rule might be 10%, if I'm buying a house at just say 700,000, but the renovated properties that are done well are selling for 900,000, well, I know that instead of 10% of 700,000 is 70, I can stretch myself to 100 and 120 and still make $80,000, in profit. So everyone will have a different tolerance to their return on investment. I like to hope that I can double it, like 2 to 1. So if I'm spending $50,000, I would like a margin of $50,000 extra to make it worth it my time. But if you're holding the property, sometimes it doesn't matter. As long as you know you're getting a tenant in there and you're minimizing all the maintenance issues, even if you don't have a return on investment, you're doing it just for the equity uplift and just to make the property livable. So everyone has a different reason, but the general rule of thumb is 10%. And that's what I would use as the basis of the split. 3% for bathroom, 3% for kitchen, 2.5% for your flooring, painting, lights, fittings, door handles and whatnot, and being a house, the landscaping, grass, plants, that sort of thing.
That's a good amount for landscaping, because I'd say that's what on a 50K. So what's that?
7.5.
50K, 7.5. Yeah, 7,500. That's sort of, yeah. It's, I suppose not too bad, but I just think when I think of garden, I'm like the tenant's going to have to then maintain that, and then it's, yeah, I don't know. Often tenants don't always maintain the gardens, particularly when there's not really, unless they're house proud. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I can tell you, out of the 3 houses that I've owned, I've spent more on the outside of the house than I have on the inside. I had to. We had filthy big gum trees or palm trees, asbestos fences that needed replacing, plumbing that needed to be ripped up and redone on the outside, like sewerage. You want to build the deck. Well, your deck's $20,000. It's nearly more than the kitchen just for the deck. So this is where a lot of people miss, their budgets is allowing for the outside, and sometimes it's just something you have to do.
Yeah. So how'd you get 12 grand from insurance when you yeah, talk me through the process, because you settled on it. It's yours. The tenant's done damage previously. It's not your damage because you bought the property at face value at 487. So it's not really your money to claim, but you claimed it and you got it. How does it work?
Well, when you buy a property, you inherit the liability and also the benefits. So the tenant is under a lease. And when that lease started, they started with a condition report. So if you suspect that condition report is not going to be favourable from when the tenant leaves, then you as the landlord are there who have to claim on any of the damage that they've done.
Right. So you had an entry report from 5 years ago from the current property manager. And what was some of the damage? And $12,000 just seems like a lot of money.
Should we look at some photos?
I've got more than I thought. So, you know, for example, walls, you know, you can only claim from the tenant to repaint 3 or 4 of the walls. But I made a choice to repaint the whole internal and external. Don't ask me why, but the insurance paid for the whole bloody lot.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks, Terry.
You know, the tenants damaged the bench top. Well, I didn't end up changing the bench top. I will change the bench top, but the insurance paid for a new bench top.
Maybe just keep some of these things under your hat, and you just you might get a call from about that bench top. Eh?
They were all legal and all, like, I never do anything that is what I would call fraudulent. You always work within the scope of what your policy allows. You know, the tenants had cracked a couple of tiles. They didn't pay for that. But there was a couple of blinds that were broken. They paid for those 2 blinds. The carpet was peed on, as I told you. You know, they paid for 1 room of carpet. I paid for 2. So as you can see, you know, I spent $43,000 in total. They only paid like a quarter of that. So when you sorry.
No. Yeah, you go on.
So it's just a matter of understanding of what you think you can claim and what you can't. And in this instance, as I said, they paid a little bit more than I anticipated, because they saw that by having to paint 3 or 4 walls, I had to do the rest. They decided to pay all of it. So I wouldn't say
so. You didn't even ask for that. They just said, "Oh, we're going to pay." Like, how did you go about getting? Like, what did they decide to pay for versus not pay?
So in my instance, the property manager that I had at the time was, if I can say, useless, and said that I wouldn't get anything out of insurance, and, you know, pretty much the tenant's done what they've done, move on. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. And then, of course, the property manager decided to have booked their holidays for 3 weeks at the same time and left me with this property. So it's like I took charge of everything. So I'm the one who does the renovations. I do all the planning. I don't give it to someone else to project manage. I wouldn't give it to a property manager to project manage my renovation if it's local. I always take charge of it. And so by doing that, it meant I got to take every single photo of every single problem, take notes and whatnot, and I lodged the application to the insurance company. Had I left that with the property manager, I probably wouldn't have got much money. But because I went into very fine detail and filled out the report and communicated with the insurance company closely, I didn't need even an assessor to go out there. They just said, look, you know, well done. You've given us a really, you know, thorough brief of everything that's happened and how it's happened and why it's happened and what you've done to cover it. And the benefit too is they pay for the loss of rent while you're doing the renovation. So if how much, 4 or 5 weeks, you're getting paid for that.
At what stage do they say, though, oh, look, you're sort of taking the mickey here? Like, if you say you're taking 3 months on a reno, like, what do they, there'd be a limit with, I mean, obviously the PDS, but what do they sort of say, the product disclosure statement? What did they say about that?
I don't know about timing, but you've got to make fair and reasonable attempts to do it in a, you know, amount of time. Now, as you know, to order things like carpet and blinds
Can
in the
take time.
current market, there's a lead time of at least 2 and 3 weeks.
Mm.
And that's what I did. And by the time you book the trades in, like one, you've got to wait for the materials to come in, and then you have to book the trades in. That ends up being about 4 weeks. So, I ended up getting rental payment reimbursement. I think it ended up being 4.5 weeks. And they don't pay to when the tenant moves in. They pay to when the property becomes available. So that means the day you give it to the property manager to stick up on realestate.com being available, that's the day that the insurance company pay to.
Love it.